Hello, and welcome to an adventure. I hope that everything is working. It looks like all the captions are working, so I think we're good to go. Hi, everybody. How are you all today? Let me see who's here. Hannah, hello. Hi, Ninja IPC. Welcome in, welcome in. Hi, Matt M33. It's good to see you. Conciliance, thank you so much for the resubscription. 46 months. Yeah, that's everybody I see in chat right now. If I missed you, hello. But we should have shared chat. Sorry, I was rushing to set everything up today like normal, so just making sure everything's good to go. Welcome. I am Anthony Wright de Hernandez, Community Collections Archivist at Virginia Tech, also known here on the Twitterverse as Rogan27. And this is Archival Adventures. This is a once-a-week show that I do sharing stuff from the archives. So it's just a chance to peek inside, see what there is. Most of the time, I've never seen the stuff. Because today is the last Wednesday of February, we are continuing today with our ongoing series of science fiction topics or science fiction stories. Hi, Fludan. So that's in the works for today. We'll talk about all of that in a second because I'm doing things out of order. But oh, hopefully everybody is having a good week so far. Hopefully February treated you well, and you're looking forward to some fun for March. Hi, Lord Portico. We're doing it lava. I mean, we can do it lava too. That's fine. So since I am in the archives here, and we look at historical things, and everything we look at is owned by Virginia Tech, we just like to glance at the history of the institution at the start of the stream. Virginia Tech acknowledges that we live and work on the Tutelo and Monacan people's homeland, and we recognize their continued relationships with their lands and waterways. We further acknowledge that the Morrill Land Grant College Act of 1862 enabled the Commonwealth of Virginia to finance and found Virginia Tech through the forced removal of native nations from their lands in California and other areas in the West. Virginia Tech acknowledges that its Blacksburg campus sits partly on land that was previously the site of the Smithfield and Solitude plantations owned by members of the Preston family. Between the 1770s and the 1860s, the Prestons and other local white families that owned parcels of what became Virginia Tech also owned hundreds of enslaved people. Enslaved Black people generated resources that financed Virginia Tech's predecessor institution, the Preston and Olin Institute, and they also worked on the construction of its building. Those are the short versions. If you want the long versions, you should be able to find them there. So, today, science fiction. And interestingly, today's story, I was not able to find a whole bunch of stuff. So this is number 6 in the series. So a while back, while we were looking at one of the spec fiction magazines, we ran across a letter to the editor from Sam Moskowitz, who was a sci-fi critic in the 1940s. And he, in his letter to the editor, listed a whole list of stories that he considered classics as of 1940. And all of them were from 1934 or 1935 from Astounding Stories under the period of time that the editor was F. Orland Tremaine. So I made a note of what the stories were, and we've been looking at them once a month just to see, like, does it seem like this is a classic? Like, almost 100 years ago, This sci-fi critic called them classics when they were less than 10 years old. So how do they stand up today? The story that we have today is titled Succubus. The author is K.F Ziska, and it was published in the May 1934 issue of Astounding Stories. That's about all I know. I found a couple of places online where it gives a little brief overview of the plot of Succubus. I could not find any information on who K.F Ziska is. I don't know if it's a pen name. I don't know if I have no idea who K.F Ziska was. They're not in the science fiction encyclopedia. Hannah, I don't actually know. I do not know. But I've tried searching in here for Ziska, and it doesn't find Ziska anywhere. I can't find just a general web search, doesn't find anything but references to K.F Ziska on the two stories that the author had published in Astounding Stories in the 1930s. So yeah, I'm just not really sure who this person is. No, not K. Z, please. Because I've not been able to find anything out about him. If anybody does manage to find something about who K.F. Ziska is, please share, because I have tried. And I tried and failed. The internet has failed me in this regard. But despite not knowing who the author is, or having any barometer for anything else that they wrote, what I do know is that, because history is full of content, this is true. What I do know is we have a speculative fiction story to look at today from Astounding Stories, and I have confirmed since last month that the entire run of Astounding Stories is in the public domain now. So that's a lovely thing, since I was reading them anyway. So even though they're 1930s, they are all in the public domain. The story itself that we're going to look at, I know, has something to do with plant life, animal life, and genetic engineering. It touches on the topic of vampires, and if you're familiar with okay, now my brain is betraying me. Song, Somewhere That's Green, Seymour Krelborn. Little Shop of Horrors. If you're familiar with Little Shop of Horrors, then the story might ring some bells. I haven't actually read the story yet. I just got that impression from the brief descriptions that I saw. History is full of content, and it was not shelf stable and does not age like a fine wine. Yes, true. So I tried searching based on author's name, didn't find anything. Hang on, let's go back to the top. Media? That doesn't get me story titles. All entries? I just one more chance to look and see, but I don't think I'm gonna find it. Also, the science fiction encyclopedia doesn't tend to have lots of articles on specific stories. It has articles on the authors, and so if there's no article on the author, I'm not likely to find Succubus anywhere. Yeah, it's not there. Well, that's why we're looking at the story, and not just and not just at things that are written about it. So, I have for you today Astounding Stories, May 1934. It was 20 cents. This is a Street and Smith publication. And we've read a couple of stories already by Donald Wandre because they were on the list. We also read a Nat Schachner recently because it was on the list. So this one, the cover is not attached. This one has actually had some restoration / repair work done. You can see here there's some thin like tissue paper repair on the portion that was falling apart. In fact, I think they just lined the entire front cover with washi, just like thin archival like restoration type paper. That's what it looks like to me. So it's especially like humorous that, or ironic maybe, that they did restoration work to preserve the cover, and the cover has become completely detached. It's pulp. But this one has significantly less criddle. The library YouTube should have one. I don't know that I've made a playlist on my personal YouTube, but the library's YouTube should have a playlist of just these, I think. If not, I will remedy that. But yeah, this issue has significantly less criddle. Criddle, I don't know if I mentioned it before. We've seen it a lot. It's the little bits of paper that fall off as I'm looking at the items, and just end up sort of all over the table. There's not one. Okay, I will make one exist, but not right this second. Actually, it'd be great if you would just oh, there is? Okay, good. I thought I had made one, because there's one for the USS Dakota Engineer videos, and there should be one for this one as well as just ones for each year of episodes. Okay, so it's in the short stories section, Succubus by K.F Ziska, page 33. And Ninja IPC, congratulations, you've been randomly selected as a VIP for this stream. Enjoy your digital gemstone and the ability to give people pun points. Okay. Illustrated by C.R. Thompson. Ooh, I wonder, is there an entry on the artist? Probably not. They're even less likely to have entries. Good Colin Thompson. UK illustrator and author in Australia from... Okay, no, he was not born until after this was published. So I doubt he was the artist unless there's some actual sci-fi themes that took place to get him to 1934. But the story of a strange scientific nightmare. That just sounds super promising. Like, yeah, let's have a strange scientific nightmare, why don't we? As I sit here at my desk, the glow of the desk lamp seems to bolster up my outraged feelings. My mind is in a turmoil of emotions. I have just read the description of an experiment so revolting, so unbelievable, that I hesitate to put it down. But I must do it, or destroy my peace of mind. I, James F. Carleton, am a physician. Although I may not have become eminent in my profession, I enjoy a fairly lucrative practice and have also become assistant to the chief of staff at one of the larger hospitals. I say this with no undue pride in my accomplishments, but in the hope that this statement will lend credence to my fantastic story. When I was a medical student, one of my classmates was Igor Boronov. Igor's father, a Russian aristocrat, had fled to this country some years ago. On arrival here, he had purchased a southern estate over which he reigned with almost feudal style. As he had studied medicine in his youth, he had urged his son to do likewise, even though in the scientific world... whoops. That is not how that's meant to be read. I don't even know why I just did that. I've never done that before. Anyway. Encouraged his son to do likewise, even though his wealth did not make it necessary for Igor to practice afterward. Igor was the despair of his teachers. He often caused a near riot in his classes by propounding some startling theory or ridiculing some hallowed tradition. His constant "why" soon became dreaded by his exasperated professors. During his last year, he was called home by the serious illness of his father. Shortly after Igor's arrival, the old man died. When Igor returned several weeks later, his eyes blazed more than ever. His irony, once amusing, was now sharp as steel. No one offered to arouse his vitriolic ridicule. Only in my company would he relax and behave like a rational person. I can still hear the dean's sigh of relief as he handed Igor his diploma. Igor accepted it, a sardonic smile playing about his lips. We bade each other goodbye. I am going to Europe for further study, he announced. If I am to carry on the work I wish to do, I must learn a great deal more. Good luck! A wave of his hand, and he was gone. Several years passed, during which I heard nothing from him. My practice had increased. I did considerable work at the hospital, and I had given him but fleeting thoughts at times. Then I ran across an article written by him. It gave a painstaking analysis of the differences of cell structure of hybrid plants. His theory, supported by countless experiments, threatened to overthrow the Mendelian law. Also, I received a letter from him pleading absorption in his work as an excuse for his seeming negligence. He was now living on his southern estate. His articles, appearing at odd intervals, quickly attracted attention in the scientific world. His researches necessitated various changes in textbooks on biology and biochemistry. He became recognized as an outstanding authority on these subjects. Honors, degrees, club memberships were showered upon him. His home was invaded by strangers. Igor was furious. He declined all honors, fenced in his estate, and permitted vicious dogs to roam about to ensure absolute privacy. He ceased to write articles and withdrew from the world. His letters became fewer and fewer as the years passed. 10, 15 years. His last letter, received a few months ago, spoke vaguely of some serious problem, which was likely to change the course of his life, and begged me to visit him as soon as I could. Was this the bold, satiric Igor I once knew? Alarmed, I made hasty arrangements for my departure and left. As I drove up the driveway leading to a colonial mansion. Ooh. Yeah, I found there's a character in fiction named Ziska, and I definitely saw that. And I also ran across a botanist named Louis Ziska, but his age is completely wrong to have been this author. I assume it's a pen name. I just don't know who it was a pen name of. Because usually when they wrote under a pen name, which was really common, especially pulp sci-fi authors at this time, they were usually publishing under 2 or 3 pen names. And so they could have multiple stories in the same issue under different names. But usually the pen names are known and you can look them up easily. This one, I have no idea. Okay. I'm going to try this again. As I drove up the driveway leading to a colonial mansion, I noted that the shrubbery and gardens had grown into a tangle of wilderness. Igor himself opened the door. His appearance shocked me. His hair was white. He had lost in weight till his skin appeared to hang loosely upon his bones. Emotion overwhelmed me. I opened my arms and cried, "Igor! Jim! Jim!" It was a wild cry of relief. He crept into my arms like a child. Hysterically, he sobbed upon my shoulder. Tears welled to my eyes as I patted his shoulders. Suddenly, he tore himself loose. "We're acting like a pair of sentimental fools. You must forgive me, Jim, but I've been under a severe mental strain. Come inside and make yourself comfortable. I hope you will excuse my appearance, but I didn't expect to see you so soon. Make yourself at home while I dress." When we met in the library somewhat later, he seemed more like his old self. Dressed and shaved, composed, he looked like a different man. We seated ourselves, puffing at our cigarettes. I decided the time had come when I must take action to solve this mystery. "Igor," I asked, "what is the reason that prompts you to act as you do? As a doctor, you must know that physically you are completely wrecked. You absolutely withdraw from human contacts. You refuse all honors which are justly accorded you, and insult the finest men and institutions with your vicious sarcasm. What is the real cause of your insane behavior? Has your work been unsuccessful? What of it? Is it worth your health?" He shook his head slowly. "Jim, my work has not been unsuccessful. I have met with success." "Success!" He lingered over the last word as if he were weighing mentally its exact meaning, and uttered a short, bitter laugh. Once more, I decided to force the issue. "Igor," I announced, "now that I am here, I intend to go to the bottom of this nonsense. I will not be satisfied with vague references. I propose to make an end of this damned mystery. Take me to your laboratory." He bounded to his feet. His face was distorted. His outstretched arms warded me off. "No!" he shrieked. "No! You wouldn't understand! No, I tell you!" His shrieks affected my composure. It was only through a decided effort that I controlled myself and sank back into the chair. "Igor!" I exclaimed. "Igor, calm yourself! Sit down!" Trembling, he collapsed into his chair. Oh, people should attack that train. Indeed, high shadows. Um, Trembling, he collapsed into his chair. Slowly, reason returned to him. He sat with his elbows on his knees, rocking back and forth, running his fingers through his hair. He got up again, pacing around the room. He walked over to a desk, unlocked a drawer, and took out a large leather folder containing a sheaf of papers. He gave it to me. "Jim," he was speaking slowly, carefully, "this folder contains notes which will explain everything to you. They are a record of the thoughts and experiences which have occurred to me during the time I spent in conducting my experiment. These notes are not technical. I asked you to come down here intending to tell you the whole story. Do it. I want you to take this notebook back with you and read in strict privacy. I want you also to give me your word as a gentleman that you will not divulge its contents to anyone." I'm watching as the train gets destroyed over on the other channel because it's muted, but it's on off to the side just because. Anyway. Serves the train right. All right, Igor, I won't reveal its contents, I promised. "One more thing," he proceeded. "When you read this diary, I want you to read it as the doctor and not as my friend. Leave all personal feelings aside." I have no idea what accent I'm doing for him. It's not quite, it's definitely not Russian, but something has creeped in. um, I assured him I would try to follow his instructions. We talked late into the night, and he appeared greatly improved in spirits when we retired. I left the next day, and after he had assured me he felt better. I arrived at home late in the afternoon. I gulped down my dinner and retired to my study. At last, I was to know the secret which had nearly wrecked my friend's health and peace of mind. Had I known the horror which this diary was to inspire in me, I should never have read it. As it was, I turned the leather cover and began to read. Okay, now we're going into the second layer of this story. We've gone from one narrative, and now we're moving one layer down into another narrative. That's always fun. Okay. Today marks the turning point in my life. Today I planted a seed which in due time will shatter every so-called law of nature and cause a cataclysm in the scientific world. Or burst my theory, based upon years of study and experimentation like a soap bubble. I have started this record. Perhaps I should call it a diary, as an outlet for my emotions. I cannot confide my hopes and fears to anyone, and I have chosen this method of relieving my pent-up feelings. It is strange that events, apparently having no connection whatever, may yet be closely linked to each other. A professor's groping for a fitting simile led to, so I hope, a discovery of far-reaching importance. It was during my junior year at medical college. A professor in one of my classes endeavored to explain some point pertaining to parthenogenesis. He attempted to demonstrate the impossibility of transferring functions of certain species to other species. He finished his remarks with, "And this is as impossible as." He groped for a fitting simile, concluding triumphantly, "as fertilization between species of plant and animal life." Tattoo Artist 117, thank you for the follow. I disliked this man intensely. He was utterly dogmatic and unimaginative. For this reason, I took exception to practically everything he said. When he uttered this statement, I protested immediately. He brushed my protest aside impatiently, mumbling something about his lecture. I was highly incensed, but had to admit to myself that I had no grounds for a reasonable debate. That moment, I vowed to myself that someday I would prove him to be nothing more than a highly trained parrot. When I finally thought I possessed sufficient knowledge to start my research work, I spared no expense in fitting out a laboratory with the finest of equipment. At the end of 2 years of work, I found myself up against a blank wall. But I did not become discouraged. It was true I had spent 2 years, but I had gained valuable information during this time. At least my problem had emerged from a massive diverse experiments. It was to produce cells, both plant and animal, which were sufficiently alike in structure, chemical constituency, and activity to permit generation of a hybrid cell. Many weary months followed. I thought myself near success several times, but the cells did not fuse. I tried hybridization of plants and also of animals. I found myself limited in this procedure, as too much hybridization was likely to result in the debilitation of the newly created cells. Again, followed a long period of tedious work. I did not find what I was seeking, but I did observe some phenomena which interested me sufficiently to publish. I had not foreseen the result of these publications. I was hailed as a genius and annoyed to the point of distraction with numberless requests and visits. As I detest publicity, I made short work of these botherations. At last, chemical and microscopic examination convinced me I had produced cells which would fuse. I joined them and awaited results. I believe I made microscopic examinations of the cells every 10 minutes, till common sense told me I was behaving like a schoolboy. But I still made periodical examinations. During one of these, I made an astounding discovery. I looked again, but there was no doubt. Some of the cells had fused. I performed a wild, triumphal dance, shouting senselessly and upsetting half of the furniture. I had succeeded! The next thing to do was to apply my experiments to a practical end. But there I ran into the difficulty which I had prophesied to myself. Decided weakening decided weakening of parental strains due to continued hybridization resulted in the inception of frail, plant-like monstrosities with animal characteristics. They died almost as soon as they broke through the soil. Atavism was very pronounced and frequent. Some of the animal plant creatures had almost all of the characteristics of plants and hardly any of those possessed by animals. Others, again, were mostly animals. They never grew beyond fetal state and died beneath the soil. I was deeply perplexed. If I tried to use a pure strain, the cells did not fuse. If I hybridized the parent cells far enough to permit fusion, I produced weaklings, which died shortly after inception. I was greatly disappointed, but now I refused to give up. I tortured my brains for another method of approaching the desired result. Then, a revolutionary idea struck me. What would happen if I attempted fertilization between a pure cell of one parent and another cell derived from hybridization of cells of the other parent? I went one step further. What would happen if I attempted fusion between a human spermatozoon and the ovule of a properly hybridized plant? Instantly, I proceeded to test the possibility of my hypothesis. I worked with feverish excitement. At last, I was ready. I prepared the final experiment. My hands shook as I adjusted the microscope. I looked. The blood mounted suddenly to my head. I had performed a miracle. The ovum was fertilized. I waited till the ovum developed into a seed. My heart beat audibly as I planted the grown seed. I regulated the temperature and humidity of the laboratory with infinite care. I gave a measured supply of water at regular intervals to the specially prepared soil. I did everything possible to further the metamorphosis of my creation. I could only wait now. I watch and watch, but nothing happens. Am I wrong after all? It cannot be. I am. But why even think of that? I know I am right. It is just a matter of time, of patience. Still nothing. This suspense is trying my nerves to the limits of their endurance. The mother plant is a hybrid of two perennial plants. The period of growth, as determined from that source, should be a year. As the growth of the male source is less than a year, the organism I have created should begin active life in somewhat less than a year after I had planted it. But have I the right to generalize? I am dealing with a phenomenon which is totally unknown to science. Nothing yet. There is nothing I can do but wait. Wait. My nerves are beginning to assert themselves. I find sleep increasingly difficult. I have found bromides necessary to quiet my jumping nerves. I have won! Today, as I looked mechanically at the humus, my attention was riveted to a slight break in the soil. I was on my knees in a moment. With uttermost delicacy, I removed small pieces of the soil which surrounded the break. I saw a tiny white growth in the aperture which I had made. I cannot sit here any longer to write. I must return to the laboratory. There is no question about it. I have performed the impossible. It is growing. It is now about a half inch above the surface of the soil. This is the height it has attained during a period of 3 weeks. It has grown to the height of an inch. It is a pinkish white growth, similar in form to that of a pestle, used by chemists for mixing coarse-grained substances. Using a strong magnifying glass, I determined that the largeness of the top was caused by the fact that it was rolled under. This is taking strange horticulture to a whole new level. I know, it's strangely appropriate given the game that I'm playing on Monday nights. um, I determined that the largesse of the top was caused by the fact that it was rolled under. It resembles a human finger bent underneath as far as possible. On the sides of the growth are two fin-like appendages, also partly rolled up. From its base grow 3 protuberances in shape like large beans. The skin, which covers the whole mass, is very soft and wrinkled in deep folds. I made a startling discovery today. I entered the laboratory after I had taken a brisk walk in the cool air. Stooping over to brush away some loose earth, I happened to touch the plant lightly with my fingers. It jerked away with a visible motion. Its folds are beginning to fill out. The appendages and the top are gradually straightening. I have noticed that the growths at its base are diminishing in size. I cannot say what their function is, although I surmise them to be concerned in the nutrition of the organism. The appendages have almost unrolled. They are quite similar to the arms of human beings. Its top is almost straight now. only the very tip being still bent under. A large crease, which, starting at its middle, runs down the center to the bottom, suggests a human figure standing erect with legs pressed tightly together. I wonder what sex, if any, my creation will have. Its shape is still too indefinite to tell. Despite my exultation, I felt... Okay, yeah, it's still that narrator. Despite my exultation, I felt revolted at the gruesome discovery I made today. The top of the plant creature had lifted itself sufficiently to permit investigation. I knelt down to peer underneath. The dispassionate examination of the scientist gave way to a feeling of shuddering aversion. I saw the unmistakable outlines of a human face. The eyes, mouth, and nose were quite clearly delineated. Strangely enough, its eyes were still shut. I could see no ears, although two tiny knobs at both sides gave promise of developing into ears at a late stage of growth. A faint indication of silky down leads me to think it will also have hair. There is no longer any doubt in my mind that the appendages, they are arms. They are completely unrolled now and show 5 tiny fingers on each hand. Its eyes are open. There must be a decided lack of certain pigments in my creation, for, like an albino, its pupils are pink. I am overjoyed! I have not brought into existence an asexual monstrosity. Okay, historical terms. I mean, apparently it is not asexual. I do think it probably qualifies as a monstrosity, though. But the juxtaposition of the two words, I was like, whoa, whoa, whoa. My creation is female. I was afraid I had created some sexless thing, but now I know I have hurdled even that barrier. Yep, I was right. Historical terms was appropriate. Oh dear. Yeah. No, I will no longer use this pronoun. I will use she in speaking of her. She is now a foot in height. I was right in assuming that the knobs at the sides of her head would develop into ears. Unlike human ears, they are not irregular in outline, but resemble smooth, one-petaled corollas of flower cups in their delicate roundness. The down on her head is becoming heavier and longer. It is of silky texture, a light blonde, almost white color. Gives it a beautiful sheen. I was surprised to note her legs are not grown together as I had thought. As she moved today, I observed a space between them. No doubt she held them together until now to support her weight more easily. I have never examined her to determine the possible existence of a bony structure within her because I was apprehensive of injuring her. I inspected her closely today, using extreme care in doing so. I detected the presence of a cartilaginous structure within her, although I could not find any indication of joints such as knees, elbows, or wrists. The growths which are attached to her ankles, she really has none, I use this term to denote location, have shrunken in size until they look like raisins. I can sit by the hour to watch her. She is perfectly motionless for long periods, except for the blinking of her eyes. Then she will start moving her body and arms about slowly, flexing herself. Today, as I was performing some tests at my bench, I heard an odd hissing sound behind me. It's a faint, steady sound, and its exact location was difficult to detect. Suddenly, the truth dawned on me. Her lips were moving. A new possibility suggested itself to me immediately. Perhaps I could teach her to speak. She has become rather listless during the last few days. I examined her, but could not find anything which would induce her tired actions. She grows more languid every day. I am becoming alarmed. What can be wrong? am desperate. If her condition does not improve soon, she will die. I have tried to feed her liquid nourishment such as milk and broths, but she spewed them out. I am almost certain it is a matter of insufficient nutrition. I examined her thoroughly. The action of her heart and lungs has weakened immeasurably. I noted that the growths of her ankles have disappeared altogether. Evidently, they furnished her with nutriment. It might be a lack of proteins. Since she refuses to take food through her mouth, they would have to be assimilated by her through the soil. In order to provide for quick assimilation, I had to prepare a liquid solution containing a high percentage of proteins. I checked a list of probable fluids. None of them was ideal. Then it flashed on me. Animal blood! It was rich in proteins and easily taken up by the soil. Hastily, I killed some chickens and sprinkled the blood on the soil. Anxiously, I awaited results. They were quickly forthcoming. Even a few hours later, she appeared to be more lively, and in a week's time, she was as well as ever. Hi, Neogets. I am trying to teach her to speak by means of association of ideas. I point to some object and repeat its name many times. I shall find it hard work, as her voice is more of a whisper than a full-throated sound. She is now 3 feet in height. I transplanted her today. She had been planted in a box which stood on the laboratory floor. I made a large circular container from concrete, pouring the mixture directly on the concrete floor. Then I filled this circular space with the proper soil. It took most of my strength to carry her, box and all, to her new home. She is learning to speak. Her voice continues to be a whispering sound, as she is unable to impart a resonant sound to her vowels. As soon as she is able to speak, I shall publish the results of my experiment. It needs little imagination to visualize the uproar which will follow my revelation. I cannot describe my feeling toward her. She is more to me than the result of an experiment. I think I can best describe it by comparing it to the affection one holds for a beloved pet. Such an emotion is totally unscientific, but I cannot deny its existence. Again, this feeling is the only one which stands forth clearly from a shadowy background of strange disquiet and faint revulsion. She is growing rapidly. Today, while I was sprinkling the ground with blood, she appeared to sniff the air appreciatively. An investigative spirit prompted me to put a few drops on her lips. For the first time, she seemed to display real emotion. She uttered a number of words, jumbling them together regardless of meaning, and clutching the fluttering fowl from my hands, brought it to her mouth. As a doctor, I was pleased. As a man, I was repelled by the disgusting sight. Apparently, she just ate the chicken whole. She is almost as tall as I. I sat in the laboratory studying her, debating what course I should follow. My experiment is completed. I should announce it to the world, but I realize what that would mean. Hordes of doctors, reporters, students, pests of all descriptions would descend on me to destroy my peace. Aside from that, I have grown very much attached to her. I could not bear to see her subjected to the morbid gaze of curiosity seekers. I must attempt to analyze my feelings. I have developed a habit of sitting in the laboratory without either observing her or performing any experimental work. Apparently, I sit there just for the sake of her company. I detected myself in thinking that I really considered her to be beautiful. Whenever she eats, I am forced to turn my head. I bring her live chickens, rabbits, ducks, which she clutches from my hands with wolfish avidity. At such times, I cannot describe her as anything less than an animal. She still grows. A frightening possibility has presented itself to me. What will happen if she continues to grow? She is now as tall as I, and I am sure much heavier and stronger. I am beginning to worry about her growth. I never suspected her tremendous strength. I put my hand in hers and pressed it by way of suggestion. She returned the pressure with such terrific force that I cried out with pain. Every bone and tissue of my hand was so badly bruised that it has swollen to twice its normal size. She fascinates me. Her large, brooding eyes follow me wherever I go within the laboratory. She makes quick, impatient movements. When I pass by her, she makes quick, impatient movements when I pass by her, as if she wanted me to stay close to her. But I have grown wary of her strength and keep out of reach. She exerts a bewitching influence upon me. The large eyes, their pink pupils, weave a hypnotic spell about me. The full, sensuous lips, crimson as the blood which nourishes them, beckon to me. Her body so strong, so beautiful in its very suggestion of power, exercises an irresistible appeal to my senses. If only... What am I saying? Thinking, what is wrong with me? Am I going mad? A terrible thing happened today. It may appear grotesque, even ludicrous to others, but to me it is terrible. As I passed by her, I suddenly found myself clutched within two hands, which held me like a vice. They spun me around like a top so that I faced her. Sinuous arms coiled about me, drew me closer with irresistible force. I struggled. I cried out in exasperation. Then, becoming alarmed, I screamed in utter fright. Inexorably, I was pressed against her body. Red, lascivious lips hovered above mine. Her powerful embrace roused long forgotten instincts within me, instincts elemental as nature. Reason left me. Long, pent up emotion broke through walls of restraint. I kissed her fiercely, passionately, again and again. I forgot all but the wondrous creature in my arms. I cannot sleep well. An odd feeling of dread, some vague premonition of danger depresses me. Weird nightmares are troubling me. I awake in the early hours of the morning, bathed in cold perspiration, and it takes every ounce of my strength to keep from screaming in sheer terror. I am neither sleeping nor eating. When I am awake, I realize the horror of my situation, and my mental agony is excruciating. Sleep is but a mockery. Frightful shapes, awe-inspiring monsters gnaw at my vitals, tear my heart, till, shrieking with fear, I return to the horrors of conscious thought. The servants have left me. I cursed them for a pack of superstitious cowards. At least, I do not have to pretend anymore. I can rave if I feel like it. Immersed in a maelstrom of emotions, I have lost all interest in my appearance. I saw myself in one of the hall mirrors. I saw a bony scarecrow whose deeply lined face was crowned with a mop of unkempt white hair. I taunted it with sadistic delight. So you are Igor Boronov, the great scientist. Scientist? Bah, you are a fool. A fool, I tell you, a fool! I saw him mouth at me. Enraged, I plunged my fist into his sneering face. A sharp pain shot through me. Stupidly, I stared at a badly cut hand. Oh God, I was going insane. Whimpering, not at the pain which the hurt caused me, but at the realization of my horrible plight, I ran toward the laboratory to dress my wound. I stopped short at the door. No, not in there. Not in there. Rather than enter, I bandaged the cut with strips torn from my shirt. I must do something before it is too late. But what? I paced up and down the library, rejecting one plan after another. Stopped. Why had I not thought of it before? Jim! Hard-headed Jim! He was the answer. He is my hope, my salvation. I shall write to him to come, so that I can explain everything to him. He shall decide for me. I have no more strength left to decide anything. I shall write the letter now while I am sane enough to do so. I have mailed the letter. Already I feel relieved. I must go now to feed her. Must I? Why not? No. I cannot do that. If I did, I would be more of a monster than she is. Not add murder. Such it would be to me, to my sins. I will not deny it any longer. I love her. I love her with all my heart, mind, and body. Again, I knew her embrace. I yielded to her. Why should I? I courted it. This seems to be the classic scientist too busy making something because they could and never considering if they should. Indeed, Hannah. And he's also losing his grip on reality, therefore leaning hard into that mad scientist vibe in the isolated manor house with all the servants dismissed, gated off from the world. Yeah, there are some themes that are fairly common themes. My actions may be vile, but I cannot help myself. I have lost my courage and respect. I will tell Jim nothing. He would never understand. His type of mind could not. The diary of Igor Boronov ended there. I jumped to my feet. Horror, disgust, and rage struggled within me. I sat down again and wrote him that he no longer existed for me. I would denounce him for his vileness and have him barred from further practice of medicine whose name he had befouled. His reply was terse and insulting. I thought you were a scientist. Instead, you are a fool. I should have known better than to trust you. I shall trouble you no more. Like a nightmare which has passed, the memory of Igor's revelation had begun to fade. The pressing demands on my time had almost caused me to forget my experience when I received a telegram from him. I tore it open and read, "Save me! Come at once! For God's sake, don't fail me!" With frenzied haste, I packed. My eyes fell on my revolver. I hesitated, then stuffed it into my coat pocket. I had an hour's wait till my train arrived. In mental agony, I strode up and down the platform. At last, I sat in the train. I gazed at the moving landscape with unseeing eyes. I tried to read. I walked back and forth on the train, smoking incessantly. Despite all my fidgeting, time dragged interminably. Small dark clouds rolled up in the sky, obscuring the evening sun at intervals. They scudded swiftly, presaging a storm. Dusk approached, turning quickly into darkness. I descended at the tiny station and hurried to a garage. Its owner, who lived above it, came down to answer my call. "Yes, sir? I'll rent you one. The car's kinda old, but it's in good shape. The road..." I cut him short, left a deposit, and jumped in the automobile. The headlights bored into the darkness ahead of me, illuminating the narrow, bumpy mud road over which I flew, disregarding the severe jolting. Frequent flashes of lightning revealed the tops of trees bending in the strong wind. The rumble of distant thunder came to my ears. Large drops of rain tapped on the top of the car, then ceased again. The moon sent a pale light over the forest, then, disappearing behind the clouds, left utter darkness. Suddenly, I became conscious of the gateposts at the head of the drive. A glance showed that the gates were open. I careened between them as I roared down the drive. With a jerk, I stopped at the entrance of the house and ran up the steps. The house was dark. No sound came from within. I rang the bell repeatedly, but received no answer. I pounded on the door, screamed Igor's name. The house remained dark, silent. I tried to break through the door, but the massive oak withstood my strongest efforts. Well, that's classic. Doors. The ultimate enemy. No one can defeat them. I ran around the side of the house, screaming. The storm whipped the words from my lips. The thunder drowned my cries. Frantic, I dashed to the back of the house. Lights showed through the partly drawn shades of two windows on the ground floor. I was weak with apprehension. My legs trembled as I ran toward them. I tried the windows but found them fastened. I broke the panes of one window, lifted it, and jumped inside. A large, marble-topped bench, fitted with racks which contained numerous bottles and laboratory equipment, obstructed my view of the center of the room. Against the wall to my left, I saw a long, white table. On it stood a Bunsen burner, whose flame heated the contents of a metal vessel. Dense, yellowish fumes which forced me to cough steamed from below the cover which was clamped to the container. I ran toward the table and shut off the flame. As I passed the marble bench, I gained a clear view of the laboratory. Hi, Bit Rebellious. Enjoy your lurk. Stark horror froze me to the floor. A frightful sight held my eyes. An immense female creature held Igor in a terrific embrace. His eyes protruded from their sockets. His head was twisted into an impossible angle. His arms were straight, stiff as iron rods. The hands were clutched tightly into fists, the whiteness of his knuckles attesting to the convulsive strength which had clenched them. The legs were drawn up to his body in a knot. Igor's life had been crushed out. She dropped his body. Red eyes stared at me. Her hair, which was almost white, tumbled about her heavy shoulders. Her massive body was like an enlarged, living model of some ancient, evil goddess. My horror grew as I observed that her legs joined at the ends into a corrugated greenish trunk, which pierced into the earth beneath her. She was diabolically beautiful, elemental, evil, cruel, yet drawing something within me toward her with irresistible fascination. She uttered strange, sibilant sounds. Her arms wove in the air, coiling and twining like living snakes. Her movements broke the spell. An insensate fury overwhelmed me. She. This was the thing which had broken my friend, his mind and body. The crash of my revolver rang out again and again. My finger continued to pull the trigger till the click of the hammer on empty shelves brought me to the realization that I had emptied the gun. With an inarticulate cry, I flung myself through the window into the wild storm. Lightning, thunder, rain raged about me as I stumbled along. The cool rain brought me to my senses. I decided to return to the house. A faint red glow showed through the trees at my right. It puzzled me for a moment. Then I disregarded it and kept on in the direction in which I assumed the house to be. It was not long before I gave up. I had lost my way. The glow had heightened till it painted the scene about me with a dark red color. Sudden realization of its true meaning came to me. I remembered the fuming vessel. The house was on fire. I must get Igor's body. I thrashed through the woods, stumbling, falling. Branches of trees whipped blows to my face. Now the woods were brightly illuminated. Finally, I reached the clearing around the house. And now we're in a horror movie. Yeah, very much so. The house was in flames. I was too late. I cannot tell what happened after that. I do not know how I left, nor how I reached home. There is a blank space in my life I shall never be able to fill. Perhaps it is better so. It may have saved my reason. That's the end. That's where it ends. He escapes. The house burned down. Interesting story. It's okay. It's time to talk about, like, is it did it deserve to be called a classic in 1940 when it was 6 years old? And would it deserve to be called a classic today? I think it was very good. It definitely contains a lot of things that we would consider tropes today, which, given that the genre was fairly new in its 20th century form in 1934, the fact that it contains a lot of things that we would consider tropes today just means that it was grasping onto things that work well in telling these stories, and doing so early on in the development of this genre in sort of popular fiction of the 20th century. So I would say yes. I can definitely see why this was considered to be classic by Sam Moskowitz in 1940, even though it was only 6 years old. I don't know how something is a classic when it's only 6 years old, but now it's closer to 80. And yeah, I think it stands well. There are elements of it. It starts off and it's got the mad scientist bit. It's got the talking plant that drinks blood bit. While not a fly trap like in Little Shop of Horrors, I definitely see the parallel there. And then it has the house on the House on the Hill type haunted house vibe with the Dracula's castle sort of thing, where you've got the manor house, the gated manor house, and the hero of the story is approaching the gated manor house, and as he's doing so, a storm is whipping up and the trees are going and it's dusk and uh the lightning is flashing, and it's very much classic horror at that point. But um that sort of classic horror, that sort of Frankenstein Dracula-esque horror, is one of the core foundations of modern science fiction, or modern speculative fiction. So I think I didn't know what to expect other than that I had seen references that made me think Little Shop of Horrors. And I definitely got that vibe. There were moments where I was like, this is just like an evil Groot. This is evil Groot. That house is 100% the haunted place with weird stories that kids will tell about it forever in that universe. Absolutely. Especially since it burned down, and probably the burned husk remained, because it burned down during a thunderstorm. So it probably didn't burn to the ground. It's probably just a burned out husk with all sorts of weird contraptions inside and broken beakers and the skeleton next to a weird dead giant plant. I'm really curious about who the author was. Like, I know there was one other story. When I look up the author, there's one other title that shows up, and I believe it's on the list. So I think we'll end up reading their other story, the other story they're known for. We do not know that the plant is dead. There is fire, which generally not great for plants, but yeah, it ends. He got away, but we don't know if the plant is dead. Yeah. So in April, we should be reading this author's other story, Man of Ages. So yeah, I I thought it was really good. I thought it was an interesting story. It's definitely got like the genetic engineering, like the dangers of the, as you said before, Hannah, the scientists too busy doing something because they could and never considering if they should. So yeah, I think it fits that. Um, Rather than try and dig around for something else, I'm actually going to let this be a short stream since we finished the story. Give that place 100 years and there'll be a weird forest and weird plants surrounding an old ruin. It'll be the death of many an adventuring party. Oh yeah, like it definitely would be a great setting for like a role-playing game. One of the there's a whole subset of like D&D that's all horror themed. It would definitely fit in well there. But yeah, I'm not gonna push for us to find more stuff to look at, so this will just be a shorter episode. Kill It With Fire sounds good until you find out that it needs the fire, or its reproductive cycle was not worth it. We don't know what plant he hybridized. It's entirely possible it was a fir tree that grows pine cones that need fire to open up. Yeah, it's entirely possible that it needed the fire. That's a great point. I am gonna wind us down. We're gonna raid somewhere that I never get to raid. We're gonna raid 16-bit Eric, who normally raids us on Wednesday. So we'll do that. Next week, it will be the first Wednesday of March, so we will be continuing with the USS Dakota Engineers Journal, and I do believe that we're close. It might be the last. We might finish the journal this month or possibly April. I'm not sure, but we're close. So we'll see how that goes. And then we've got some other interesting things coming up. But I hope that this was fun and interesting for everybody. I enjoyed reading it. I thought it was a lovely time, and I'm looking forward. So far, I would say for the most part, um, all of the stories that we have found have been not nearly as bad as I was expecting. I mean, they've all been great and without a lot of cringe. So, but thank you so much for joining me. I hope that you will raid over to 16-bit Eric with me and say hello over there, and just throw some support his way. Hopefully, I see all of you again soon. But until I see you next, keep exploring history, everyone.